Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be all about my birth story. Life with a newborn has been fantastic, but also kind of rough, we're gonna be honest. But it's been great. We love our little Emmett. He's amazing. And if you haven't already, go check out my other video of meeting baby Emmett because he's adorable and I love him so much. But I'm just gonna go ahead and get started because this is a doozy of a story. So I'm just gonna jump right in. So basically, Tuesday night going into Wednesday, I was having a really tough time sleeping. I was just tossing and turning and there was no pains or anything like that. I just couldn't sleep, and I remember thinking I need to get rest because if I go into labor tomorrow or if I go into labor tonight, I need to be well rested. That's the #1 thing that everyone says, like make sure you get your rest. So I came out here on the living room couch to try and get some sleep just because I couldn't sleep in the bed. I felt like itchy and I just felt uncomfortable. So came out here probably like 4 in the morning. So I think I got a couple hours sleep because 7:30 in the morning my husband woke me up to go to work. He was going to work and he said, go back to the bed and try and get some sleep. And as soon as I stood up, I felt like a rush and I was like, okay. So I didn't say anything to him, but then I went to the bathroom and I like checked my underwear. I know it's kind of gross, but it's a birth story, so get ready. And I was like, yep, like there's clear liquid in here, like it wasn't pee or anything. So I was like, I think my water might have just broken. And so we both got excited, but I was like, I don't really know. And then there was like bloody mucusy stuff, and it's called like the bloody show. Anyways, I won't go too much into that, but so stuff was happening basically. So we got really excited, and then another time I went to the bathroom later and I felt another rush. So I was like, okay, is that more like fluid coming out? Because I know it doesn't just happen as like a gushing thing. If it does, like that's not really good because my baby's head was really low. So I was like, oh, this is happening because like it's my water breaking. I was totally sure of it. So we texted my sister, texted my mom, texted some friends, like, oh my gosh, we think it's happening. Big mistake. But anyway, so then we called our midwife because we had an appointment that day, and we said, do we still come in or do we kind of wait for labor? She's like, well, you're having contractions. And I said no. So sorry, my camera's being ridiculous and keeps shutting off on me, but anyways, I said no, there's no contractions, but like, you know, stuff's happening for sure. And so she said, okay, well, it might not have been your water breaking, so still come in at 3:30 unless like something's progressed since then. So Brad stayed home from work for the day because we're both really excited. Obviously it's our first time, and we just rested. We like relaxed on the couch and we just watched a movie. And then we went in for our appointment, and it was kind of sucky because like I really didn't feel anything all day. And I only had those 2 rushes of water like in the morning, and it was only like a bit of water. It wasn't anything crazy. And that was it. And then, like I said, like the show or whatever they call it kept happening. So we went in for my appointment. She's like, well, hey, I'm going to check you and see what's going on kind of thing. So she did an examination, which was extremely uncomfortable. She's like, this is uncomfortable normally, but being pregnant, it's even worse. And it was. It sucked. And she said, okay, so you're 1 centimeter dilated, which I was like, oh, I want to be like 5. Like, anyways, I get that it takes a while. So I was 1 centimeter dilated, and she said the reason for all like the bloody stuff was because my cervix was thinning, which she said that is great. And then she said, which she was super excited about, was that baby's head was super, super low. And she was really, really excited about that. She's like, that is phenomenal. So she's like, it might not sound like a lot is happening, but all of that put together equals awesome. And then she did like a stretch and sweep where like they go around the membranes in the sac and they separate it from like the wall kind of thing, and that just kind of helps get stuff going because she's like, you're already progressing, so this will either kickstart you into labor or you're just gonna have really bad menstrual cramps and it's not gonna do anything. So she's like, you know, go home and we'll see what happens kind of thing. So we left from there, and I did start to feel some menstrual cramps. It wasn't extremely uncomfortable, it's just kind of like, oh, that sucks. And then we went to go get some spicy pad thai because we basically tried everything else to help this baby come out. Like I've been bouncing on a ball all week and doing lunges and doing everything that everything said, basically. And so the last thing I hadn't done was spicy food because I hate spicy food. So we went and got pad thai, and I got a level 2, which I know is not hot, but I normally have nothing on it. So we went and got that, and I was really feeling it. So we go home and we put on Seabiscuit, and I was bouncing on the ball as I was eating spicy food because I'm like, I want this to happen. And I had like really bad menstrual cramps. Like it got to the point where I had to start walking around, and I was like, okay, like this sucks. And I was like, this better send me over because I don't want to just have this for nothing. So then my mom happened to call, and this is about 6:30, and I couldn't even talk to her on the phone because every time one hit, and I'm saying it as a cramp, but it turns out they were actually contractions, but I thought they were just cramps because I didn't know what to expect. I had to like walk around the house, like I couldn't even focus. I couldn't sit down. I was like, this sucks. So then they kept coming as my husband was talking to my mom on the phone. Sorry, I'm trying to like remember it as I speak it, but and she's like, well, maybe you should start timing them because those sound like those could be contractions. But what I had always thought a contraction was that it was like it was your stomach, like, because people said, oh yeah, it starts out as menstrual cramps and then it's a contraction. So I thought like I wasn't going to feel it in the pelvis, I was just going to feel it in my stomach. So I'm feeling all of this in my pelvis and I'm like, this isn't labor, clearly. Like, it's not a contraction, it's just really uncomfortable and it's coming pretty rhythmically. So then my mom said time it. So Brad started timing it and they were coming every 4 minutes apart. And we were like, okay, like this is kind of something. So then we hung up with my mom because she was just like, okay, like kind of go about your night and keep us updated. I'm so sorry. Keep us updated. And then also just because I was getting to the point where I was like, okay, like this really, really sucks. So we got off the phone with her and then I said, okay, I'm gonna go in the bath. Because the one thing they said too was to go to the bath, and if it stops, then you're not in labor, and if it keeps going, you are. But once again, I was not thinking these were contractions. I was just really thinking that it was just sucky menstrual cramps. So I went to the bath and Brad really started timing it. We downloaded a contraction app and they were coming still 4 minutes apart and they were lasting just under a minute, and then they started to last a minute. The midwife said call them when they were 3 to 4 minutes apart and they're lasting a minute. But once again, we didn't think they were contractions. So we were looking online and everyone's like, yeah, I started out with menstrual cramps and then they turned into contractions. I'm like, okay, so I'm just at that stage. But I had also read online that you should try and ignore the early labor, and I'm like, I can't ignore this. Like, I literally cannot ignore this, because I would be lying down in the bath and then every time I felt one coming, I would just latch onto Brad like this, and I would stand up and I would just like sway through it. And then it got to a point where I started to have to like moan out loud almost, because it was just like, okay, this like really, really sucks. So we texted our family doctor, who was really good friends with us, and she said, that sounds like it could be a contraction, so call your midwife. So at this point, I'd gotten into the bath probably around 7:30, and now it's about 11:30 at night, maybe even 10:30 by the time we called the midwife. So we called our midwife and she said, it sounds like it could be something. She's like, I'll come over and check, because she only lives 2 minutes down the street, thankfully. And she said, if it's something, then we'll go from there. If it's nothing, I'll go back home and you can continue kind of laboring. So she's like, I'm gonna take my time though, like, you know, kind of just keep doing what you're doing. So she came over probably about an hour later, and same thing, I'd just been in the tub and I just kept standing up with each one, and I like, you can just feel it coming on, and it was like, no, like I just want more rest, because I would like close my eyes between them. And then same thing, like I would just stand up and just hold on to Brad, and he was awesome, and we played some like worship music in the background, and that kind of helped me get my mind off of it. But they were lasting a minute, and they're about 3.5 to 4 minutes apart. So she shows up, Brittany, and she comes in and she's like, okay, it sounds like something's happening. So then she checks me and says, okay, you're not gonna like this, but you're only 2 centimeters dilated. And I was like, are you kidding me? Because I've been doing this from like 6:30 to 11:30 now, so what is that, 5 hours? So I was like, to dilate 1 centimeter, are you kidding me? But she said the beginning takes the longest. So she's like, you're doing great. And then she said, I'm gonna stay with you, because the way that these sound and the way that they're coming, it looks like you're gonna be progressing, like this is kind of real. So she stayed with me and she's like, I'll check you again in another 4 hours. So we just kind of kept going through it. They sucked. They really, really sucked. I could not ignore any of it. So she checked me again 4 hours. I was 3-4 centimeters dilated. She's like, that's great. She's like, this is the hardest part. Basically from now on, you should progress pretty quickly. So she had me try all these different positions. I wasn't able to eat anything. And at this point, I hadn't slept since basically Monday night, because Tuesday night I didn't sleep. And now it's Wednesday night going to the early hours of the morning. And I was fine though. Like, I was kind of like, let's just do this. Like, it sucks, but let's just do it. So once again, just holding on to Brad the whole time. And then I was having back labor. So she had me go into the shower, and I just like pounded the hot water on my back, and it was just like glorious. And P.S. you lose all sense of humility basically when you go into birth, and it's just like, whoever sees me naked sees me naked, because she kept having to check the baby's heartbeat, and I was in the shower and she just checked me, and I was like, I don't even care, like I don't even care. So baby's heartbeat though the entire time was awesome. It was good. It was so high and so great the entire time, which was fantastic. I'm so sorry, but I'm trying to say this like perfectly, and my mind is just thinking of everything, so if it's all like over the place, I'm sorry. But anyway, so I went to the shower, and then she said, did you want to try out a TENS machine? She's like, it's my first time using one like of my own. I've used one before, kind of thing. Basically what it is, it's like these little paddles, but they're just kind of like fabric that you put onto your lower back, and then when you have a contraction, you press the button, and it like sends almost like vibrations to like help you like numb / not feel the pain. And it's just like electronic, it's not drugs or anything like that. And then when you're not having a contraction, it just goes to like a lower setting, and it's just kind of there the whole time. So I was like, sure. So I put that on, and that helped amazingly. So every time I felt one, I was like, click, click, click. It felt like a drug. It was awesome. Excuse me. But it was awesome because it wasn't a drug. So I had that, and then the whole time, like I said, I was just leaning on Brad, and then I think that Brittany could kind of tell Brad was getting a bit exhausted, because she's like, all right, let's try some different positions without Brad. So she like had me get on the bed on a bunch of pillows and lean forward, and then had me go on my side, and none of them were as good as just leaning on Brad, like just having Brad there. And then also she had me like go on the toilet, and yeah, just a bunch of different positions happened, and it was painful. It was sucky. It sucked. But I just kept going, and I will say this 100 million times, but I totally believe it was God. I totally believe it was the Holy Spirit was in that room and just let me keep going, because I don't know how I kept going. So then the next time she checked me, I was a 6'7", and this was probably at like 6 in the morning, I think. So she's like, that's great, you know, you're doing great. So I was like, okay, like, that's awesome. And then, but of course I wanted to be a 10. And then, because it was so uncomfortable, and it was so long, and I was just like, what is this? Like, I thought I was going to be in and out and done, and, you know, first time mom, you think, oh, I'm not going to be the one with the long labor. So anyway, so then once again, she's like, okay, we'll check you in 4 hours. And every time they said that, me and Brad both looked at each other like, 4 hours? But honestly, the time, it went by so fast because you just focus on each contraction, and because they're coming every like 4 minutes, like, time just moves. So it was like 2 hours have passed, 3 hours. So then, was it she who checked me, or I can't remember. Oh, so she switched off with the other midwife at 8 though. So because she'd said, oh, we'll check you at 10. So she switched off with another midwife because she'd been with me from 11:30 till 8, and like, you don't know how long the birth is, so you don't want to just keep staying. So she switched off, and I got Pilar, who was also fantastic. And it was awesome too, because like I had them both when I like needed them. So I had Brittany from the beginning when I needed like the go, you got this, keep going, like, don't let the contraction take over you, you take control of it. And the whole time in my head I'm like, just dilate, just open, just be great. Oh, and when she had checked me too, and I was 6'7", she's like, baby's head is even lower. So she's like, that's fantastic. Because that's what she was really excited about. She's like, baby's head being low I'm more excited about that than the dilation. So anyway, so then she switched off at 8 with Pilar. So Pilar came in, and it sucked too, because Brittany had to like pack up all her birth supplies, and then Pilar had to like put all hers out in case Brittany got called to another birth. Random side note. But anyway, so Pilar comes in, and she was awesome because she was kind of like the calm mother. Like, she's a really cool woman, and you wouldn't think of her as like a calm mother if you saw her, because she has like this funky little attitude and hair and stuff. But anyways, random. But she was just like calm presence, and like just gave me water without saying anything, just did things without saying anything, and it was just like exactly what I needed after having labored for like 12 hours, well, 14 hours at this point. So then she checked me again at 10, and oh, sorry, see, I suck at this. So also with Brittany, baby's getting hungry. Also with Brittany, she broke my water when I was 6'7", she broke my water, and she noticed like some like discharge in it, and she wasn't sure if it was meconium or not. So she's like, right now I'm gonna call it as meconium, but I'm not sure, because I know that you said earlier in the day that you had like a lot of dark blood that came out. So she's like, I'm not 100% sure, but I'm gonna call it as meconium because it's not clear liquid. So, which sucks, because that basically means that the baby would have pooped already, and we'd have to go to the hospital afterwards to kind of get it checked out and stuff. But she's like, I'm not worried about it right now. I was like, just keep going. So anyway, so then my water's broken earlier, so now Pilar's here. She checks me at 10, and I'm still 6. I'm a 6'7". So she said, okay, we have to go to the hospital, because at this point I've been laboring for 16, 17 hours, and I was just exhausted. I was exhausted, and she said, we have to go get you some pain relief. And I was just like, okay, like, I didn't fight it. I just knew. I was upset. I didn't cry, but I was upset that I wasn't gonna have the home birth that I really, really wanted, and no drugs, but I knew that that's what needed to be done. And so she just like packed everything up as me and Brad just kind of like still labored, because she took her like half an hour to get everything ready, but at the same time she called the hospital, said she's on her way, get the anesthesiologist like kind of set up sort of thing, get the room ready. And then Brad grabbed my hospital bag, which really sucks because I packed a hospital bag for a 3-hour visit, not for what turned out to be a 4-day visit. So yeah, so I just told Brad like quickly throw in a couple extra things, and then we just kind of like ran out the door and left. And then I had a contraction right outside the car. I had to wait before we got in the car, and then I had one right in the doors of the hospital. And then they brought me a wheelchair, and I was like, no, I was like, if I'm having a contraction, I need Brad to lean on. It's funny because anytime Brad would like leave to go do something, like even if it was just to get himself a snack and I felt him coming, I was like, Brad, and he would like come running, and same thing, I would just hold on to him. He was my rock throughout the entire at-home labor, the entire thing, but the at-home labor, having him just to lean on was like, it was just beautiful. It was just what I needed. So anyway, so then we get to the hospital, and she straps me up to the like monitor to monitor the baby's heartbeat, and once again, baby's heartbeat was fantastic the entire labor. And then she strapped me up because, to do my contractions to see how far apart they were going. At this point, I noticed that they had started slowing down, because I did have 3 in the car, and it's like a 25-minute drive to the hospital, and like if I only had 3, that means that they were clearly spacing out. So basically my body wasn't like really doing as much anymore. It's becoming too tired, which I think is also why she sent me to the hospital, because she's like, if this is slowing down, like it would be too long. So anyway, so they sent me to the hospital and I ended up getting the epidural, which was not as scary as I thought. I think in the States, I don't know if it's just different or what, but like he did it basically where I could still feel my legs, I could still move my legs, I just couldn't feel the contractions. And I remember when I lied down for the first time, I was expecting to feel one. And I was scared, because I was like, I don't want to feel this anymore. Like I'm so over feeling this. And so I was like not believing that it was instant. And then when after a couple times, and I was like, okay, I haven't felt anything in like 10 minutes. It was fantastic. It was exactly what I needed. And not saying that I want to get an epidural just to have an epidural, but like it was exactly what I needed for this particular birth. So then Pilar was just like, okay, I just want you to sleep now for a bit, and I'm just going to monitor everything. And so I slept, and then Brad slept in a chair. It was like a lazy boy for a couple of hours, and I kind of heard people coming in and out, and she kept coming and checking my pulse and then my temperature, baby's heartbeat. And then they also put me on oxytocin though, because the epidural slows down your labor, and because I was already slowing down, we didn't want that. So they did give me oxytocin, which I'm glad it wasn't Pitocin. And they were just monitoring that, and she started me off at a lower level, which is awesome, because I know in the States that they kind of just start you off and want you to get going, but she's like, no, like we've got time. So then she came back in and checked me at, I think it was 6 o'clock. I think Dr. Ray Bube, who was my gynecologist, he came in, and once again, like I totally believe everyone is sent here from God to give me like the best labor that I could possibly have, because he goes to our church as well. So he checked me at 6 o'clock, and I had not moved. It had been 12 hours and I had not moved a centimeter. I was still at a 6'7". And so Pilar told me, she's like, if you had any other doctor on staff, you'd be going in for a C-section right now. But she's like, we need to keep in mind that if you do not move again, you will be going for a C-section. But right now, he said he's okay. He's going to give you another 4 hours. I think it was 4. I think it was another 4 hours. I can't remember if it was 2. But anyways, I think it was 4. So anyway, so that really sucked. I was really upset about that I hadn't moved, and I started to get a little bit scared. But at the same time, I was like, no, like I'm not having a C-section. I just kept praying. And our friends actually, Emma and Andrew, who do all our photos, they had come at like 2 o'clock, and they were just waiting in the lobby. They're like, we're not here to interfere. We're just here. We're here for prayer. We're here if you need anything. They brought back Brad food. They brought me power drinks, and it was like so beautiful. Like, oh my gosh, that was like the sweetest thing ever, just knowing that they were there and they were just praying for us in the hallway, basically. So yeah, so 6 o'clock, and they said, we're going to give you 4 more hours. So I kind of rested a little bit, and then I think at like 8 o'clock, Pilar left and Brittany came back, so Pilar could go home and sleep, because we didn't know how long this was going to take. So Brittany came back, and we basically just kind of sat and we talked, and she's like, you know, you have to have moved by the next time I check you, because if you don't, it's a C-section. And I was like, I don't want a C-section. That's like the last thing I want. And they both knew that I want a lot of kids. And so they said, like, if you have a C-section, it's going to complicate things. Like, you probably won't be able to get your 5 kids. So, like a little bit later, I was like, oh, I feel like pressure in my butt. And she's like, that's fantastic. That's awesome. If you have the feeling like you want to poop, that's so good. And so it was just funny. We were talking about poop, and it was weird. But anyways, so then when she did check me again, I was an 8, which was awesome. And Pilar had also been monitoring the oxytocin before, and she had kind of upped me a little bit. And they had gotten my contractions, whereas they were before coming like erratically, were now coming like every 2 minutes apart. Every 2 minutes apart, and they were like consistent. And so that helped. And so she checked me, and I was an 8, and Brittany was so excited. She basically like was dancing and jumping up and down. She's like, oh my gosh, you're an 8. Like, this is awesome. This is so good. Yeah, it was awesome. And it's funny too, because, okay, I'm remembering random things, so I'm sorry once again, this is all over the place. But when Brittany and Pilar switched off for the first time in the morning at our apartment, she told me afterwards that she'd gone to Pilar and said, she's gonna sound like she's about ready to push, but she's not. Like, her contractions are so strong already that like you're gonna think she's ready to like have this baby, but she's nowhere near it, which was funny. And then also when Brittany had gone home, she told her husband, she's like, this girl is awesome. And her husband was like, you say that about every single like person who gives birth. And she's like, no, but this girl, like, she's awesome. So I just thought that was cute and funny, because I just kind of went with it. I was like, this really sucks and these are really strong, but I just went with it. My little baby wants to eat, so I gotta finish this up. But so Brittany's with me again, and I can't remember if this is 8 or 10 o'clock, so I'm an 8. So I was like, yeah, this is awesome. Some of my times are messed up though, because I feel like it was 10 and I was ready to push. I can't remember. Yeah, no, 10 o'clock doesn't make sense. Must have been 2 hours they were gonna check me, and they checked me at 8. So they checked me at 8, and I was an 8, which was awesome. And then she's like, okay, so we're gonna wait 2 more hours and we'll check you again unless you feel the urge to push. So then it was about an hour went by and I was starting to have to like really breathe through. I could start to feel like, not the contractions, but just like pressure in my pelvis. And so I had to like breathe through it because I really felt the urge to push. So she's like, okay, like I'll check you now then instead. So she checked me and I was a 9, which is awesome. So she's like, oh my gosh, you're so close. And then this is gonna sound really weird, but she's like, so I've heard about this and I've never actually done it myself, but if you'll let me, I'll try it on you. Basically, they shove ice cubes in your hoo-ha and it helps to make you dilate. So because I was a little bit swollen just because of the pressure and how long I've been going. So she put ice cubes up there and it made me dilate to a 10, which was weird and hilarious. And she talked about it afterwards and she's like, I can't believe that actually worked and that's something that happens. So I was a 10 and she said, okay, so I'm going to teach you how to push, but for right now, if you feel the urge to push during the contraction, just push. Because now I knew when the contractions were coming, because like I said, I could feel not the actual contraction itself, like it wasn't really painful, it was just like lots of pressure. Yeah, lots of pressure. And like same, and then she said again, she's like, baby's head is so low. And she's like, honestly, like your baby's head is already, like, let's say that this is where most people have to push, like baby starts here and you end here. She's like, baby's already halfway there. So she's like, that's fantastic, which after you hear about how long it took me to push, it's fantastic that baby was halfway, because if it had been full way, I probably would have had a C-section. So anyways, 10 centimeters dilated, so I just started pushing with each contraction, and then she actually showed me how to push. She's like, basically push to your butt, push like you're gonna poop. So we did that, and then you have to make sure that there's like no tension in anywhere else and you're just giving it all to your butt basically, which was really, really hard because she had me push 3 times. So I would like get my breath and push and get my breath and push and get my breath and push. And the first 1 and 2 I could do it, but by the third one I could totally feel it on my face and I couldn't do it. And you can only do it with each contraction, obviously, because that's what really helps get the baby out. So so we were pushing and she had me try all these different positions, and then Pilar came back in probably an hour after I'd been pushing, and there was just lots of stretching to help me because I couldn't really do it by myself. And yeah, so lots of stuff happening, and Brad was right there by my side the whole time. And then we started getting closer to a 3-hour mark, and I heard them say something about like 3 hours, 3 hours, 3 hours. And so finally I said to them, I'm like, what happens when we get to 3 hours? Because I think we were at like 2.5 at this point. And also Brad's family had showed up. His mom, his dad, and his cousin were in the waiting room as well. They'd come a couple hours before, and I just kept feeling bad because I'm like, this is taking forever and all these people are waiting. So at this point, I think, yeah, it was like 11:30 maybe closer to 12. And I said, what happens at the 3-hour mark? Because the 3-hour mark was 12:30. And they said we'd have to get forceps or a vacuum. And she said, we're not doing that. Like, you're doing this by yourself. And there was this point where I was at where they were like, okay, so like there's an arch and baby's head's here, and when you push, you're pushing baby, but then baby pushes back. So I was only really moving 1 millimeter with like each push, which really sucked because like it hurt. And it was like, it didn't hurt, it was just a lot of pressure, and it was like, oh, I just want this baby's head to go like this. And I thought that when baby's head went like this, it'd be fantastic and I would feel amazing and I'd get like a break. It's not what happened. So finally I felt that push, and I got the baby through, and it burned so bad. If any of you have heard about the Ring of Fire, which a lot of my family hadn't, my mom didn't know what I was talking about, but oh my gosh, basically baby gets here and then it's like kind of halfway, its head is kind of halfway out, let's just say that, and it burned so bad. I was like, what the heck? And I was like, give me forceps, give me tongs, cut this baby out of me, like get it out. And so like I kept closing my legs, and like Pilar kept having to open them because she's like, the baby's head's there. She didn't say that, but I realized afterwards that's what. So they're like, no, come on, Courtney, like you're right there, and it hurt so bad. So they actually had to give me an episiotomy, which is where they cut you, because I just basically, baby ended up being a bit bigger than I thought it was going to be. So I had that, which I didn't feel at all, but I felt it afterwards in the healing. So anyway, so they were like, come on, your baby's right here, and it took a while to like push the baby, like once it was out, to actually push it out again. And by a while I mean like probably like 5 minutes, which doesn't seem like a long time, but it caused a little bit of trauma to his head. So anyways, so then they're like, come on, Courtney, your baby's right here, like you're gonna meet your baby. And like the whole time Brad was like, look, Courtney, they're setting up, like your baby's coming, kind of thing. So then finally they said, all right, 3 more pushes, and I did 2, and baby was just like whoop. And I remember hearing too, like you get the head out and then like the shoulders, but baby just like slipped all out. So I was like, that's fantastic. So they took the baby out and I was like, oh my gosh, of course, like instant relief, as everyone says. And then they put the baby on me and I was just like, oh my gosh. I was like, Brad, we had a baby. And it was probably like 30 seconds later, because they put a blanket right on top of the baby to keep it warm. And we were like, oh my gosh, we don't even know what it is. And so we lifted it up and it was a boy. And my instant reaction was, boy? oh my gosh, we had a boy, like just pure excitement. And then right away I looked at Brad and I was like, is it Emmett? Is it Emmett? And he's like, yeah, it's Emmett, it's Emmett. And so so we named it Emmett Asher Dieter, and it was born at 12:18 a.m., which is really funny because the midwives had signed all the paperwork for the 15th, because Brad had been asking them all day, like, are we gonna have this baby today? They're like, oh my gosh, yeah, this baby's coming today. And then it made it 18 minutes later, so it was the 16th. So it was funny. So she's like, I have to go change all my paperwork, but it was funny. So then I had the baby on me and he pooped immediately all over my arm, like all over. So, oh, and that was the other thing too, is when they checked me later in the day, and because they kept like changing the pads under me, the fluid was clear. And so she's like, I'm gonna say that he didn't pass the meconium because this is too clear, like it would kind of just keep coming. So he clearly didn't, because he did it all, like literally, like I had an IV and he did it all over my arm and it was disgusting. But I didn't care at that point. I was like, what the heck, like it's just baby poop. So I did skin to skin with him, and then like we breastfed a little bit, and then the whole time Brittany is like sitting at the end like waiting for the placenta. She's like, okay, try and push it out. Nothing was coming, nothing was coming. And she needed to stitch me up, but she couldn't stitch me up until the placenta came out. And so, and she's like, if you wait too long, there's swelling, and then it just makes recovery worse. So anyway, so then I could just see it on her face, because it was probably like 30 minutes later and she's like, this placenta's not coming out. Like you could just see that she was like, we have been laboring with this woman for 30 hours. She did 3 hours of pushing in that 30 hours and this placenta won't come out. Like, can you give us something, please? Like, my body just would not let up. I think I drank too much red raspberry leaf tea because my uterus was so strong. It wouldn't let the placenta come out. So then they kept trying. So then they got Dr. Webube to come back in, and he tried and nothing. So then they called it a retained placenta, where basically it's still stuck to the uterus wall. So I had to get it surgically removed, and I had to be put out for that. So it only took like, I think Brad said I was gone for like 2 hours, but like the procedure itself didn't take that long. But Brad like went with the baby, and they went to go measure it and weigh it, and then he got to show it to his family while I went upstairs, which kind of worked out perfectly, because I wouldn't have wanted to see anyone at that point, because I hadn't slept since Monday night, and now it's Friday morning. And so, yeah, so I went upstairs and they knocked me out, which felt fantastic because it was the first time I'd slept in like 4 days, even though it was only for like probably 5 minutes. And so they took all that out, which really sucks, because, I mean, they had to go in and like scrape it out of me, basically. And then my aunt had warned me. She's like, you are, I have 10 minutes. She's like, you have red in your hair and you have pale skin, like it's your Irish in you. So she's like, you could lose a lot of blood. So she was kind of nervous about home birth sort of thing. But that ended up happening. Like I lost a lot of blood because of the retained placenta, because they waited, they wanted it to be natural, and they kind of waited, and then having to scrape it out, I lost blood. So I lost a lot of blood with that. But anyway, so then they wheeled me back into the hospital room, and then Brad stayed for a bit longer, and I think he stayed till like 2 a.m. sort of thing, and then he left because there was no, it was a 3-person room in the hospital, and there was no one else in it except for me, which is awesome. So then I think I slept probably about a total of 4 hours that night, like off and on, and they kept bringing the baby in every 2 hours to feed, or every hour, basically whenever it cried, which was fine. The baby, it's Emmett. And so, so they did that, and then the next morning they checked my blood level, because I was like, okay, like, oh, because that's what she had said, like, they'll probably have to stay overnight, which I was like, oh yeah, obviously that's fine. So then they checked my blood level Friday morning, like he was born Friday morning, but they checked it around 7. And then I think around 9, Dr. Webube came back and he said, so your blood level, your hemoglobin or whatever is really, really low. You lost a lot of blood. So he's like, we have to give you 2 blood transfusions, which was fun. So I had someone else's blood put into my body twice. And then they kept checking my temperature, and they kept checking my blood pressure, and they kept bringing the baby in. And then Brad came back probably around like 9 in the morning, I think, because I said, I was like, this is your last night of sleep, like go get sleep. So he probably came back around 9 or 10. And then we had some visitors come back. I think his family came back. Maybe not. I don't think his mom came back. I don't know. We had some people that day, but I didn't see anyone, because when I was a hot mess because of I had like this IV stuck to me because of antibiotics I needed, because I had the placenta taken out, and then I had the 2 blood transfusions, and then I had an IV and all this stuff, and then like just down there was not good because of the episiotomy, like swollen like nobody's business. It was disgusting. But anyways, and because it was like, it took so long, I was really, really swollen. And then I went into the mirror, and I did not look like myself because of the IV or the epidural or the drugs, I don't know, but my face was swollen, and because I hadn't slept in so long, I literally probably had like 3 bags under my eyes, and they were huge. Like, I did not take a first family photo because I did not look like me. Like, I looked horrible, and I'm not just saying that because I'm saying that. Like, I looked really, really bad. And everyone kept saying, where's the mom, where's the mom? And I'm like, I'm not seeing anyone, and I'm not just being like superficial, but like I didn't feel like myself, so I didn't want to see anyone. And also I was exhausted. Like I said, I hadn't slept, really long labor. And so anyways, so then I was expecting to be like, okay, I have to stay here till Saturday morning now because I've had this blood. So then I was like, Saturday morning we're getting out of here. So then Saturday morning came, and they were like, he gave Dr. Bubé, he's like, you know, your blood's still a little bit low, so we're gonna have to give you an iron supplement that you're gonna have to take. But he said, you know, I'll give you the go ahead to go home, because he could just tell that I just wanted to get out of there, because at that point, Friday night, 2 more girls came into the room with me, and they happened to be friends, which sounds like fun, but not when you're the other person who just had her first baby and you're exhausted and you haven't slept, and they're having their 5th baby and they're totally okay because it just slipped out of them. And then they had like 30 visitors, I'm not kidding you. At one point they had 30 visitors come and visit them within like a 2-hour span. And I was just in the other bed, and I started crying because I was so exhausted. I was so tired. And I was like, I just want to sleep, and I can't sleep because they're having all these people come in. Anyways, totally different story. And I know this is so long, but like, this is legit what happened. So anyways, so then, so yeah, so we had some people come. Oh, Emma and Andrew came back and they brought us food. So now, yeah, this is Saturday, and I think my aunt came, and my cousin, and just some other people, and I quickly said hi to some people, but like, for the most part, I just kind of stayed behind the curtain. I was just like, just see the baby, you can see me later, I just need to rest. And then the hospital food really wasn't that bad, but the portions were really, really small. So anyway, so yeah, so Saturday I was like, yes, we're going home, we're going home. And then they came and they said, your baby has jaundice. And I was like, okay, my mom had warned me about this, like, yeah, sure, baby has jaundice, I'll put it in the sunlight, it's fine. But what happened is, because when the baby got here and then like it got stuck, when I felt that ring of fire, there was pressure on his head, and so it created a bruise on the back of his head that was probably like yeah, like that big. Like it covered the majority of the top of his head. He got a bruise. So jaundice basically is when the baby's inside of you, it has all these extra red blood cells for oxygen and stuff, and then when it comes out, it doesn't need them anymore. And so the body breaks them up, and if the body, for the most part in babies, it doesn't break them up well enough because there's so many, then the babies get a little bit jaundice, and for the most part it's fine, and they can just, you know, put them in the sunlight and they're fine. But for him, because he also had that bruise, he had all those extra red blood cells on the top of his head that he had to break up, so he had his body and his head bruised that had to be broken up, so it was just too much for his body to handle, kind of thing. So Brittany came back the one day and she said, okay, we're gonna do it as a precaution because I know you want to go home. So she said, either you go home and you have to come back to the hospital and he's gonna have to go under the lights, or you do it right now and he goes under the lights and maybe you can go home tomorrow, kind of thing. So I was really upset because I really just wanted to go home, and I was tired, and I knew that like me going home would just make everything better because then I could get my rest, because right now I'm like, I'm not resting, and how am I supposed to take care of baby if I haven't slept? So anyway, so we said, okay, fine. So it was 4:00 p.m. They put us into a separate room, which ended up being the best thing ever because then I didn't have to listen to those girls and their guests. And it was a semi-private room, which normally you have to pay for, but because he was going under the lights, he had to be away from everyone, and like the lights, like there's this blue light and babies have to wear glasses, so they couldn't have any other babies in there with us. And there was 2 beds. So we went in there. Oh, and then we saw, that's when Brad's mom came, and his sisters, and someone, oh, and then my aunt and uncle came, and so I saw them, kind of thing, during the transition, and we all moved over. And I first time I was like kind of talking to people and kind of feeling okay, but I was just like, I was so tired. Oh, I gotta hurry. So then we had to put baby under the lights for, she said, 12-hour span. And she's like, basically just get him in there as long as you can. If he fusses, like leave him, like he needs to be under the lights, So we put him under the lights, and it was the saddest thing ever because he was basically nothing but a diaper, and then he had like this creepy like little white mask to cover his eyes, so it was like all here, and he did not look like my baby, and I felt so bad. And he was in there and he was screaming, and we would take him out, and like his skin was like peeling, but it looked so much worse, and like just really, really red, and like his lips were cracking because of the lights, and it was just like, oh my gosh, I feel like they're burning you alive. But I know now, like that's not what happened. So then anyway, so we put him under, we just kept praying. We're like, please Jesus, please Jesus, please Jesus, like let his levels go down, because basically the way that they measure it is that there's all these different measures, and it's based on days and their weight and all this stuff. So where he was this is when you need to go under the lights, and he was right under it. So Brittany said, as a precaution, so you don't have to come back, we'll put him under the lights right now, and hopefully that'll help. So we put him under the lights, and when they came back, so he was like this and he had gone like this. So they said it worked, but you know, like he's still right under the lights. So the people said, we're gonna have to put him under again, and his weight's dropping, so you're gonna have to feed him formula, which I was like, I don't want to feed him formula. Like I don't like formula. I totally understand people who do it, people who need to do it, but like for me, it's just not what I wanted for my baby. It was just, so she said, it's up to you, kind of thing. she said it would probably help him be less fussy because he was screaming in there and we couldn't get him to calm down. And so, and she said like he could be getting a little bit dehydrated, and she's basically like freaking me out. So we put him under, and then he started screaming right away again. So I was like, whatever. I was like, just get the formula. So we gave him the formula, and he actually slept for like 4 hours because the first 12-hour chunk we did, he just like screamed all the time. But they were like, keep him in, keep him in, keep him in. So we did the next 12-hour chunk, and we did the formula. It was just like one or two bottles, I think, like tiny little things. So it really was nothing, but I was so nervous because I had heard stories like, oh, you know, don't give them the nipple until like so many weeks because you want breastfeeding to be established. But he was doing really, really well. Like he had a great latch, so they said like, don't worry. But I hadn't slept, as I keep saying, but I really hadn't slept, and I didn't want to do this, and so I just started bawling. And the one nurse was just like, basically, she said to me, she's like, you need to suck it up, your baby needs this, so be quiet. And I was like, oh, okay, and I just like started bawling. So anyways, so then we had him under the lights again, and then 12 hours later, 8 a.m., was it 8? Oh no, 8 hours later, he was in for 8 hours. So they came back and they tested him again, and he had gone under like a lot more kind of thing. So it was really awesome. So he was now out of like the high intermediate level, and he was like low intermediate. So then I was freaking out though, because it's like they're treating this baby like it's sick, and also he had a heart murmur. He had a heart murmur, which Brad said, I had a heart murmur and it went away, and I've heard so many people who have heart murmurs and they just go away. So anyways, it just felt like suddenly I had this baby that was like, you know, sick. And me and Brad kept looking at each other. We're like, he's not sick. Like, this was a precaution. Like, he didn't even have to go under the lights. We did this so we could just go home. And like, why are they freaking out about this heart murmur and talking about having to go here and this and surgeries and stuff? And it's like, it's a heart murmur. Like, it's only day 3. Like, he's only 3 days old. Like, most of the time it goes away within 3 days. I am pushing the limit on my time right here. And I know this is really long. I hope you guys are okay with this. So anyway, so then Brittany, my midwife, came back because I was weird. It was Sunday, and I was even sitting there. I was like, I just need Brittany. And no joke, like half an hour later, she shows up, and I was like, I was just saying I needed you. So she said, honestly, she's like, the nurses are making me feel exactly the way you're feeling. She's like, I'm doubting everything that I'm doing, because she said, we don't have a sick baby. She's like, we put him under the lights as a precaution. He wasn't even at the level where he would need it. And even like the level of really needing it, she's like, he was nowhere close to that. Like, he wasn't going to be brain damaged from this. Like, nothing. Like, this is a precaution. And she's like, the heart murmur goes away. Like, that's something we can check later. I don't understand why everyone's freaking out. So I was like, thank you, like, for reassuring me, because I was like, that's what I thought. But then they were telling me all these things, and they made me give him formula because they said his weight was too low. And she said babies lose 7 to 10% of their birth weight. She's like, I see babies, because he lost 9.6%. He was 8.5 at birth, and he went down to like 7.9, I think. And she said, I see babies who lose that much weight weekly, on a weekly basis. She's like, he's fine, he's got his latch is great, all this stuff. So she's like, don't worry. She's like, I'm gonna go out there, you know, I'm gonna talk to them, we're gonna get you out of here. Because they kind of talked about like, oh, he'll probably need to go under the lights again. And I was like, I cannot stick him under those lights again. And so she came back and she's like, all right, she's like, you are discharged from me as far as I'm concerned. She's like, we're just gonna wait for the one doctor to come and check his heart murmur, and then if he gives you the go ahead, you can go. And I was like, please, Jesus, let me leave. Like, oh my gosh, I just wanted to go because I was so sick. Because I just heard babies cry all night long, and I wasn't sleeping, and I wanted my baby out of there. I just, as a mother's instinct, I was like, we need to leave this place. I said, we will both be better if we just leave this place. Like, it just was too chaotic, and it was too like, oh, doctors, like, this is wrong, this is wrong. And I'm like, nothing's wrong. Like, he's fine. He's totally fine. Like, it was ridiculous. So anyways, so then, so yeah, she gave us the go ahead, and then I just had my baby, and I was like, I love you. And she said, like, you're in this room. So she's like, if you want to put him under the lights, go ahead. I literally have 5 minutes to finish this because he's so hungry, and I know I won't be able to film it again. But anyways, go ahead, like, it's there, and that way when he gets tested again on Tuesday, because I had to bring him in Tuesday again, or Monday. She's like, you have to bring him tomorrow to get him tested again for bilirubin levels. Then, you know, he'll hopefully be a little bit lower. So then we put him in, he didn't like it, and I was like, I'm over it. I was like, he's been in there for 12 hours in total, and I said, I'm just done. So I took him out, and I was like feeding him and just being with him, letting him sleep, and I was like, I'm over this. So then finally at 2 o'clock, we were like praying the whole time, like, please doctor, let him go home, let him go home. The doctor came in, and he's like, oh yeah, like, he does have a heart murmur, but I'm not concerned about it, because like he's gained weight since he lost weight kind of thing, and his vitals, like, he looks like a healthy baby. He doesn't look like the heart murmur's affecting him. So he's like, you know, schedule it with your family doctor to go to McMaster to go and get an echo, which we just had done, and I'll tell that in another video because this one's gonna be too long. And so he's like, yeah, you're good. And so I was like, what? Like, Brittany made it sound like we had to wait for you to say, yeah, go home. But he was like, no, like, go home. So then we were like, whoa! So the nurse came in, she's like, so you can be discharged. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I had no energy. I had no energy, but for somehow I found it, and I just like raced around the room and like grabbed everything and like picked it up, and I was like, we're leaving, oh my gosh. And so We took our family photo that day, and then even my family doctor, she's like, you had 2 blood transfusions and you still looked pale as a ghost, which I know I look like in general, but I looked really bad. So she thought that was funny. But anyway, so we took our family picture and we raced home, and I was like, oh my gosh, we're home, and we have a baby. Oh my gosh, but it was awesome. It's so awesome to be home, and I knew it's just what we needed, and we slept, and we have a newborn, and life is amazing, and life is crazy, and like I said, I totally believe God was all over that birth, because it was 30 hours, 3 hours of pushing. I almost needed a C-section, but like just by the grace of God, I was able to just do it. And like I said to Brent afterwards, I was like, I don't even understand how I didn't get to a point and just said I'm done. Like how I myself didn't get to a point and say, okay, I need drugs, or how like I just didn't say this is it. Like I just kept going, and like I said to Brad, I was like, I totally believe it was my Holy Spirit just getting me through, so I could have that natural birth, and just all the amazing people who prayed for us. And I even had my one friend Jade say that like she had called her mom and she had called this person, and just everyone was just praying for us, and it was just beautiful. Like it was just so wonderful. It totally was not the birth that I had prayed for or thought I was gonna have, but it was better than what could have happened. And so I was just very, very thankful. And for those of you who've had C-sections, I'm not trying to make it seem like C-section's the worst thing in the world, and obviously if that's what it had come to, it would have happened, but I'm just very thankful that it didn't. And then everyone kept saying, they're like, I swear that your next birth will be nothing like this. So I was like, please tell me that that's the truth. So that is my birth story, and I feel like I left 100 things out, but baby Emma is here, and we were both so happy, and he gained weight so fast after the birth. It was hilarious. It was almost like, haha, take that, nurses. And then at one point when we gave him the formula, he spit it back up, and Brittany was like, haha, that's his way of saying, look mommy, like I'm listening to you. Anyways, but yeah, Brad, it was cute because he was like, you're my new hero. He kept saying that. He's like, you're my new hero, like after seeing you go through that. And I was just like, I don't know, I just did it. And then it's funny too, because like right afterwards people say like, and it happened to me, I was like, I don't know if I can have another kid. Like that was pretty intense. And I legit was like, I don't know if I can have another one. Then a couple days later I was like, okay, I think I can do that again. So anyways, I have to go relieve my husband because he's been amazing and trying to tie over my baby, but I gotta go feed him, and that's my birth story. And if I forgot anything, I'll leave it in a new video or something, but I'm sure this video is like an hour long, so I'm really, really sorry. But thank you guys for watching and for listening, and it was intense and it was crazy, and recovery was sucky, but I'm better now and it's good. And Emmett slept for a 4-hour stretch last night, which was awesome, and I never thought I'd be excited about that, but I am. So thank you guys so much for watching. Leave your comments down below, and if you had a crazy birth story or just anything you want to say, leave it down below. I'm so happy and I love you guys, and I need some sleep. Okay, bye guys.